Well, it's me again. When is the last time you adjusted your trailer brakes? I'm going to show you on these trailer brakes, the last time these were adjusted is when we done their initial adjustment when they were installed. We're going to take a look at these, so let's see if we can zoom in and see the wear and tear. Can you see that? That groove's about 1/4 inch deep. Check this magnet out. That dude is worn smooth out. It has had a hard life. I would hate to be that magnet. If you look, there is still some shoe left on here. It's not completely worn off, but there's been all kinds of metal grinding in there, tearing the shoe up. Pretty rough. These are trash, or like we like to say, they are going into the cheeseburger fund. So what you would never believe is this brake job is only about 6 months old this month. And I know you're thinking, how in the world can this only be 6 months old? Well, it's simple. No trailer brake adjustment, no burnishing, no 3,000 mile interval adjustments. So if you don't do that, you won't have any brakes. But what you will have is a new brake job repair bill or a parts bill if you're a DIYer doing it yourself. So if you want to save yourself some time, trouble, and money, remember, you got to burnish your brakes, adjust the brakes, and then readjust them every 3,000 miles. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is a question that we still get asked probably the most, other than maybe having to wire my 7-way plug. How do my brakes work? How do I need to adjust my brakes? How does the brake controller work? So we're going to do an update today, and we're just going to cover a few of those. We're also going to leave links to videos that we've done on each and every one of those individually that go maybe a little more in depth. So if you want to go check those out, if that will be helpful for you, those will be in the description below. So let's talk about this, see if we can maybe do a refresher. It's good for me to do a refresher every once in a while. Every once in a while I learn something new, believe it or not. So let's just jump right into it. If you'll take a look here in our mini recycle or scrap bin, you'll see that it is brake job season. This is just a few days worth of brakes. This is a week worth of brakes, a month's worth of brakes. This is 2 or 3 days worth of brake jobs. There's a few couplers and some springs in here, but it's primarily brake kits and drums. So let's go take a look in our big recycling bin to see how many brake jobs we've done in the last 3 weeks or so. Let's see what's behind door number 1. As you can see, we got all different shapes and sizes of brakes, maybe a few tumbleweeds here and there. This is about 3 weeks worth of brake jobs. It is brake season. I can assure you that none of these have been placed in here because they've been properly adjusted. They have been used and abused, and they're going to go die in a scrapyard here soon. So let's get back to our trailer. Let's see if we can give you a few reminders, catch us all up to speed, and maybe save you some money in the long run. So as you can see here, we have our new backing plate assemblies, drums, bearings, the whole shoot and shebang installed on this tandem axle 7K setup. Like I said, this brake job, the previous brake job is about 6-7 months old. We've got everything put back. We went ahead and had to do some suspension work while we're in here as well. So what is the first thing that we do once we've got to this point? The first thing we're going to do is install the tires and wheels, and we're going to tighten the lug nuts to the proper manufacturer spec, of course. So once we get those on, we're going to tighten those up, torque them down, and then we're going to have one guy underneath, one guy on the outside. We're going to do an initial or pre-adjustment. So we're going to adjust those brakes, make them all equalized, all with the same amount of friction. We're going to get it ready for that. Then we can set it down on the ground. We can hook it up to the customer's tow vehicle. And then as the customer or the person towing this, it's your responsibility to burnish those in, kind of keep up with your mileage, and do your initial adjustment after that burnish in, break in period. Once you do that, then it's going to be a little while before you have to adjust them. Now, if you have self-adjusting brakes like the last video we done, it is going to be adjusting during that break-in period. If you just want to leave it at that and just think it works great, that's the decision you're going to have to make. I'm going to encourage you after that initial break-in period, the burnishing in, that you jack it up, you do an adjustment. If nothing else, just to make sure they're working all right, make sure they're all dragging about the same. You don't have one that's freewheeling and maybe one that's too tight. That way, if you need to adjust one up or maybe back one off. So that's a decision you have to make, but I'm going to encourage you, even with self-adjusters, to take a look at it. This is one problem I see right now that we see a lot of like this trailer right here, it's gonna go straight into the workforce as soon as it gets hooked up. We have travel trailers, RVs that we put on here. We're gonna do a brake job for a customer. They're gonna get in their RV and they're gonna pull it to Montana. Well, I'm gonna tell you, if you pull it to Montana, you're gonna be on the road a while, you're gonna put a lot of miles, you're gonna have plenty of miles to have burnished them in, done your initial adjustment, and almost ready for your second adjustment. Now, whether or not you do that, that's the decision you have to make. But I'm gonna tell you, with brand new brakes on here, they're not gonna be stopping 100%. They may only be stopping 20 or 30%. You've got to burnish them in, and you've got to do that initial adjustment after the break-in adjustment that's done in the shop, or if you've done them yourself, that initial adjustment you done before you hook it up. So remember, tighten the lug nuts, put them onto manufacturer spec, and then you got to re-tighten the lug nuts. It's very, very, very important, and to get your brakes burnished in. So after we get all that done, we're going to hop in the pickup. We're going to talk a little bit about the brake control. That's another question we get a lot about brake control, so we'll cover that a little bit. So let's go get the keys and jump in the truck. Remember, click it or ticket. So we're going to show you how to burnish in the brakes, how to use the brake controller. I am not going to hook up to a trailer today. I'm just going to show you the technique. So the first thing we got to do after we hook up to the brake, or after we hook up to the trailer, is not run our controller all the way up. You know, probably needs to be below 5. You don't want it dragging. You don't want to do this on a major highway. What we're fixing to pull out is a major busy highway. We're going to drive up the road a little bit, get on a little backcountry road, use a service road. I wouldn't recommend doing it in the middle of town, so you're not going to impede any traffic. So now that we're out of the way, we're going to set our trailer up. We're going to come to complete stop. We're going to run our brake controller up. We'll see if we can get the camera in here to do that. So I'm going to run the gain up to around 10. If you're hauling a little small trailer with 3500s, you may not need to go that heavy or that hot. But if you're pulling a bigger trailer, go ahead and run it up. Here's what's important. You have to remember to take the gain back down once we get this done. So once we get it up to here, you can run 15, 20, 25 miles an hour, and you're going to do some bursts, and I will demonstrate that with the manual controller, whether you have a factory controller like this, so where your display is going to be one place, your manual is going to be another, or if you have an aftermarket, usually those are on the same unit themselves. So we got our brake controller set on 10. We have no traffic. We're going to pull up, and we're going to get up to speed, and we'll do a little burnishing. So I'm right at 20 right now. I'm gonna pull down, hold it just for a little bit. You'll feel the brakes engaging, then I'm gonna let off. Then I'm gonna get up to speed again. And while you're depressing your manual, let off of the brakes and the accelerator on the tow vehicle. Let the trailer brakes do the work. So now that we've got up to speed again, we're going to depress, we're going to hold it down, allow the trailer, you can start to feel it grab. And as you do this more, you will feel it grab more. That's how you know you're doing some good. Let it off. Go ahead and do it again. You can do this 5-10 seconds. Do not overbrake it. If it's super hot outside, keep that in mind. Let it off. But you can do this 4 or 5 times. Let it cool off a little ways if you've got a long road. Then do it again. You know, maybe do it 10 times. We're going to pass this railroad track. We're going to hit it again. And remember, I'm not towing a trailer, just doing a simulation here. Now, if you're doing this and you start to feel tire lockup or skidding on the trailer, back the brakes off. They're too hot. Go ahead and back them back down to, you know, 7, maybe 6. We're going to do it again. Let off. Do it one last time. I got to about 40, so I'm gonna slow down a little bit. Trying to do it over about 25. And depress them as it begins to slow down. Let it off. So now what I'm gonna do, you don't have to stop. If you can keep from taking your eyes off of the road and where you're driving, just bump it down. I'm gonna bump mine down to about 4. If your trailer brakes are working good, you don't need to have them up to 10. I don't know of any scenario you should have them at 10 unless you're burnishing in. That trailer that we just got done working on, I guarantee you those dudes were on 10. They were trying for everything they had to get that trailer stopped. It wasn't a voltage issue, it was a brake adjustment issue. So once you've done this, you got to put some miles on it. If you want to do this again in a day or two, go right ahead. It's not going to hurt it. But again, if they seem like they're grabbing better the next time, just back your gain down. Just because you did it at 10 the first time, you may need to, have that gain back down. You don't want the tires locking up and skidding. That's another comment or question we get. I tried my brakes and they won't lock up. Well, if they lock up, you have them adjusted too tight or you're running your gain too high on the controller. Now, I will say this, if you have multiple trailers, you're gonna have to set your brake controller up on each trailer differently, depending on the weather, depending on the load you have on it. It's not a one size fits all ever. There's not one, I get asked, what's a good rule of thumb? I'm gonna start around 3 or 4 is where I'm gonna start. I can increase or decrease depending on what I'm carrying, but I can pull the same trailer 3 times in a week and I can put the same payload on it, but depending on the outside temperature, humidity, the brakes are gonna work differently. So you may have to make some small adjustments. It may only be 1 volt on your gain up or down, so it may not take much, but spend time doing that. Once you get the hang of this, you'll have much better braking. Your brakes will last longer. And after we get this initial burnishing period, a couple 100 miles, if you want to stretch it out to 500, you can do that. I'm going to recommend it about 200, whether you do this yourself or not. Then you're going to need to adjust the brakes on the trailer. If you do not adjust them at that point, you've just wasted everything you've done, unless they're the self-adjusters. The self-adjusters should have adjusted themselves out, but as I said earlier in the video, I'm gonna recommend on that initial break-in burnishing period, go ahead and jack it up, check them out to make sure that they come out. If you need to make a small adjustment manually, either up or down, that's the time to do that. Then after that, it's every 3,000 miles after that, you need to do a brake adjustment for manual brakes. Self-adjusters will adjust themselves if they're working correctly. You know my feelings on that. You can see the last video. We'll leave a link in the description to check that out. Do this to save yourself some time. Do this to help save the brakes on your vehicle as well. But remember, that trailer is not made to stop this vehicle. That trailer is made to work along with this vehicle, so they stop together. They stop safe, nothing's skidding, especially in rainy weather. Just take a little time, make your brake adjustments, and I promise you, you'll have better luck stopping, and you will save yourself some money. I guarantee you will save yourself some money. So check your lug nuts and check your brakes. Leave us some comments below. Click to subscribe if you like our videos. Leave us a comment if there's a video you'd like for us to cover, and we'll see you on the next one.